Fabio Wardley versus Daniel Dubois is a guaranteed knockout. But to who? All of that and the undercard here today on the preview show. Straight into the action. I mean, Fabio Wardley, Daniel Dubois, when it was announced, it was kind of like, oh, like no one's complaining. It's a brilliant fight, but I don't think we saw it coming.
No, I suppose not. I mean, the mandatory for that was Usyk. Well,
Usyk,
Wardley
yeah.
was the, that should have been the fight. Obviously, Usyk's gone and tried chasing a bit of glory with kickboxer Rico Verhoeven, which, you can have your opinions on that fight, but that is what's happening. And as a result of that, we've got very entertaining all British dust up.
Yeah, I mean, everything, I think every way you look into this fight, it's really interesting. It's really exciting. You look at the fact that they're two British heavyweights fighting for the world title. Tick, great, love that. You've got the fact that it's a voluntary defence from Fabio Wardley. So he's clearly seen something in Dubois that he thinks this will be a good scalp on my record, but actually it's a fight I should be winning. Tick. And then it's two guys that can hit like hell. Two of the most powerful punchers in the heavyweight division. And we have with Dubois, but not with Wardley. We haven't really seen that chin properly tested in a way that Daniel Dubois will. So there's a lot of question marks. I think a lot of people, I know Ben and Harry are struggling to kind of put a name on who they think's going to win. I suppose that's that's what you want from a fight, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I would say, as far as heavyweight boxing goes, it is pretty 50-50. I mean, I have someone I'm leaning towards, but I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if it went another way.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about it. And you've got the fact that Fabio Wardley's coming into it, like Fraser Clark, that second fight, that knockout in the first round, and then Justice Hooney to pull that out the bag at Portman Rose, and then to kind of go in there with Joseph Parker, and everyone went, yeah, this is the one that's one step too far. And he outright won that fight. He did what he had to do and he won it. So he's going to come into this so confident and believe that he's going to stop Daniel Dubois. But then Dubois, when you look at it, I think there's been a bit of revisionism since he lost to Usyk. Heading into that Usyk fight, everyone was saying that he was probably number 2 or number 3 in the world. And he loses to Usyk and everyone starts going, he's not all that good. But who doesn't lose to Usyk? Like, everyone has lost to Usyk. The run he had, like off the, Oleksandr Usyk, but before that, obviously, Anthony Joshua, Filip Hrgovic, Jarrell Miller, since that first Usyk loss. Like, that's an unbelievable run. Both these fighters come into this with really good runs. So, yeah, I wouldn't count out Dubois. I think a lot of people are counting out Dubois. And I just wouldn't risk it. He is such a big puncher. And when he believes and when he has the confidence, he lets those hands go like we saw against AJ. If the Dubois that turned up against AJ, that supreme confidence turns up, I can't see him getting turned over. But he doesn't always turn up that version.
Well, I think that's the sort of thing that he's trying to instill in his mentality now. I've seen a few of the face-off things, and you can see that Dubois, everyone knows he's not the best in social situations, but you can see he's trying to put on a front, and I think that's that sort of drilling in that mindset early on before the fight, that he's going to go in there and he's going to walk him down and he's going to be confident. And I agree with you, that is his best way of winning. However, I'm just a really big fan of how Fabio Wardley conducts himself. And he gets written off pretty much every fight because, I think mostly because of his background, didn't really come from an amateur career. He's come from the kind of white collar scene and he's made something of himself. And you can't be messing around with that power.
Yeah, it's like you say, it's really, I think Ben Davison did an interesting about it. He was saying, imagine you are Steve from HR and you've decided to go do a white collar charity event and Fabio Wardley, former or future, world heavyweight champion, turns up opposite you and knocks you spark out. And it's an unorthodox route, but he's got everything he needs to do. And I think in many ways, his biggest strength as a world champion is what would be most heavyweight champions' weakness, which is that he's pretty humble and he looks to negate what he works out his opponent. He puts together a plan, and he knew in that Justice Hooney fight, I don't need to win 12 rounds against Justice Hooney. That's not my fight against Justice Hooney. I just need to find that one good shot. And he found it. And I think for a lot of people, I spoke to Johnny Nelson about this, about the mentality to be a champion. You've got to believe there's no one on earth that can beat you, particularly as the heavyweight champion. You've got to believe nobody can beat you. But I think Fabio Wardley knows that people can beat him, but he also knows he can beat them, and he just finds a way to do it. So like you say, you can't really write him off because every time so far, he's found a way. Fraser Clarke fight, that first one, he dropped so many rounds to Fraser Clarke, but he found a way. He found a way to get that draw. And then in the second round, you know, he said it himself. Fraser Clarke couldn't change from that first fight. Fraser Clarke's been fighting like that since, you know, he was a kid. He went, this is what I did wrong. Found that one shot, and it was a scary knockout.
Paralysed his face.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable knockout. So I'm minded similarly to you, I think, without trying to give away my prediction too far, to struggle to write off Fabio Wardley. But then there's just something with Dubois that you say he's probably more schooled as a boxer. He's got a better amateur pedigree. He's a more technical boxer. I don't see a world where Fabio Wardley beats Dubois on a points decision.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to get to that. I don't think it's going to be a fight where we'll be sat after 12 rounds going, oh, I wonder what the judges thought of that. I think these guys will end it in the ring.
Does the Justice Hooney fight worry you from a point of he was being outboxed?
Yeah, it does a little bit. And I think that's why going into the Parker fight, I was like, oh, well, he's going to lose to Parker because Parker is a better fighter than Justice Hooney. And Justice Hooney did all of this and da-da-da-da-da. But he found a way. It does to a degree, but you have to say, it was similar, we were talking about Conor Walker in the week. If you get the stoppages, it kind of doesn't matter. That's the beauty of the knockout, is it renders everything else irrelevant. So if he continues getting those shots and finding those shots, you know, Wilder made a career out of it. It can be done, but I think to boil him down to just one shot is unfair, because he does set it up. He does make, you know, it's not an accident. They set it up. It's what they do. Like I said, but it does worry me because Dubois is so powerful. If you let Dubois let his hands go too much and gain too much confidence, then yeah, he can stop you easily, and he can get you to unravel. I mean, he took some bombs against Parker Wardley, but I think from everything I've heard, Daniel Dubois is one of the biggest hitters in heavyweight boxing, and when that lands, if you let that land flush on the chin, then anybody says goodnight.
Not to go into too much of predictions, I don't know if that's what we're doing yet, but you're talking about confidence, and it's necessary for Dubois to have the confidence to let the hands go. But we've seen this tale millions of times. He's not going to be willing to let his hands go, knowing the power that's coming back the other way.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And like you said, Wardley's going to be so confident going into this one. He knows and he believes that he will win this fight. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter. But yeah, I don't know. It's like you said. I mean, I was fortunate enough before the Usyk fight. I think it was 6 weeks out to interview Dubois, and it wasn't this big thing. It was a fairly sort of controlled environment the whole day, and interview and seeing him train and stuff. But even then, I got the sense that the mission is not necessarily teach him how to throw a jab, teach him how to throw a hook. It's up here that matters for Dubois. So yeah, if he lets bombs go and Wardley walks through them, we've seen it before. Unfortunately, with the Joe Joyce fight, people will always throw in his face that he quote unquote quit in that fight. People say the same thing with that first Usyk fight, that he quote unquote quit. I think both of those things would be unfair, but we see when his confidence runs dry that he maybe doesn't have that killer instinct that you need to put someone out there. So it's got everything. It really does have everything. I think we can go into our predictions a little bit now rather than saving it to the end. We used to obviously do the boxing news predictions, but they don't update their app anymore, so we'll just we'll freestyle it. I get the sense you're leaning one way quite strongly.
I would never be too overconfident, but I am leaning towards Fabio Wardley. Yes.
Yeah, and why? Have you got a strong reason, or is it just a sense?
Partly a sense. It's partly from stuff I've watched. I love the way that he's carrying himself. He is humble, like you say. He's got humility, but he's also approaching it with respect. I think he knows the scalp that Daniel Dubois would be, and he's been in there with the best. He's got a better CV than Wardley has. But I just think it's a lot more challenging for Dubois to go in there confident, dodging Wardley's shots, than for what Wardley would have coming the other way. I think in Wardley's mind, he just has to outbox and land the big shots, whereas Dubois has got to control himself and not leave him open, while also dodging shots. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and he's not the fastest heavyweight in the world, Dubois. I think we saw against Usyk. I mean, obviously Usyk's a different breed and a different thing altogether. But we saw in that fight that when he was hurt, Usyk was able to then make him completely miss and find that shot because of his speed. I'm not necessarily saying or comparing Usyk to Wardley by any means, completely different fighters, but we know that they will have a game plan. And if that game plan is finding and knowing his weaknesses, knowing when Dubois maybe overcommits to shots and things like that, and then he can find those counters, you land flush on the chin, and we've seen he can go down. I mean, any man can go down. It's why this fight's so interesting. I think both men can hurt each other, and it's just who will. Like you, I'm leaning towards Wardley, and I know Harry is pretty confident. I think that Fabio Wardley's going to win. Ben keeps flip-flopping every day about it, and I've been like that all week. I've been thinking, oh, but Dubois this, oh, but Dubois that. So, yeah, I think it's a really interesting fight, and I'd love to know what people in the comments on YouTube or Spotify have to say about this one. But I think it has got to the point now where Wardley's going into fights favourites. And sometimes that's all. I think sometimes when you're an underdog, like he is in the sense of his background, that almost goes against you a little bit. There's a part of me I've so many times I've not backed Wardley and he's made me look daft, that I have a sense that this time I'm going to back him and he'll make me look daft by losing. So maybe there's just some insecurities there from me.
Everyone's luck always runs out eventually, but I don't know if he will be the favourite in this fight. I'd be surprised if a wide majority favour him. I still think they'll lean towards the Dubois just because of who he's been in there with. I mean, he knocked out AJ.
Yeah, and he knocked out AJ. He stopped Hrgović, which is no mean feat. Even going back, the Joe Joyce that Dubois lost to is not the Joe Joyce that has been getting in the ring for the last year or two. He was a different proposition. I think anybody would have told you at that point, Joe Joyce was one of the most difficult heavyweights to fight in the world. I think Dave Allen's come out and said in sparring that nobody hits and hurts like Joe Joyce did back in the day. So, yeah, from that point of view, I think you might be right on the favourite, but ultimately it doesn't matter. We being treated to a lovely British domestic fight that I can't wait for. I mean, it's pay-per-view, which I think is slightly frustrating. I think we've seen a couple of times now we saw it with Wardley. Parker was pay-per-view, but the undercard didn't deliver on that one. This undercard, kind of, if you had to pick fights to warm up for this one, that's exactly what they've done. They've gone two domestic fighters, absolutely game. Both are going to want to hurt each other right the way up the card, which I think is a really smart way of doing it. And I I get a big fight feel from this one, which you don't always get, but I do have a big fight feel about Wardley Dubois.
I'm expecting blood all over the canvas before they've even rang the first bell for the last fight. I think it's going to be one of those nights where it's just going to be every single fight is a banger.
Yeah, I think every fight is going to be an absolute war or quite an early stoppage. I think most fighters and most fights in that card, and this one really could be an early stoppage. I know I've given it the curse now by saying it's a guaranteed knockout, but it's as close to a guaranteed knockout as you get.
I can't see many worlds where it goes to a decision, and if it does, I think it'll be one of those fights that severely disappoints if it does get to a decision.
Yeah, because they both carry their power late. We've seen it. I mean, Dubois was able to stop Jarrell Miller, which not many people can say they've done, right at the end of that fight. Hrgović, he weathered a storm and still carried that power. And then obviously we've seen with Wardley, the Parker stoppage was late. It took him a couple rounds of pressure, but he got him out of there. The Justice Hooney knockout was out of nowhere, but it was late. It was after 10 rounds of getting your head boxed off. So I just, like you said, I can't see a world where neither men get to one another enough to unravel them and then eventually get the stoppage. Or we see what heavyweight boxing is, which is where that one shot lands and they never recover from it, which is a likely option for this one. I don't see Dubois being able to take Wardley's best shots based off of what we've seen in his career. We haven't really seen what Wardley's chin's like too much, but I don't think anyone can take Dubois' best shots and continues fighting to tell the tale.
I mean, look at the size of him. would be the last thing I'd want to.
He is a unit. That's the one thing I got from. I mean, he doesn't look that big next to Wardley, and Wardley's not a huge heavyweight in this one, so that's an interesting. But when I was in camp with Dubois, the size of that man is scary. You could land a aircraft on his back. It is a joke. I've never seen anything like that. Then I sat next to him on the sofa and I felt so minuscule. I felt not much of a man in that situation. But yeah, so hey, it's heavyweight boxing. If people in the comments as well, because we got pelters last week for bigging up Inoue Nakatani and going, oh, you know, what state boxing's in, that we're getting excited about bantamweights, and that's another conversation. But this is what you want, right? It's two former or current world title holders, both paper champions technically, but they beat out and out fighters to get it. These are world champions.
Oh, 100%. I don't think you could take that away from Wardley, especially current holder. He legitimately beat one of the best heavyweights in recent times, Joseph Parker. He's always up there.
Yeah.
And he knocked him out.
And like you said, it was a paper, you know, he got the belt by email, as people like to say, but that's a world champion he beat. In the same way as Daniel Dubois beating AJ, that's a world champion. That's a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world. You have to say, yeah, you count as a world title. With that being said, though, going a little bit more before we move on to the rest of the fights, what happens next? Obviously, we don't know who wins this fight, but I think there's interesting fights to be made regardless of who wins this fight. I know for Dubois, it may be slightly more complicated because he's fought Usyk twice. No one's got interest in seeing him fight Usyk a third time, but Joseph Parker, albeit slightly complex with a failed test for cocaine, I believe it was, and we don't really know what's coming from that. But I think to finally see Dubois Parker, we were meant to see before Piccoli was flown in on late notice, is probably the fight for Dubois next, I would imagine. So
to me, it's the only real thing I could see available. I mean, I've heard all sorts of rumours about Joseph Parker. That's another day. But if that fight were to be made, I'd be interested in watching it. I think it's overdue, like you say, was supposed to happen. Didn't happen.
Yeah, that was a frustrating one, that. But I mean, when Parker then, albeit out of camp, completely iced Martin Piccoli, he then almost stumped himself as that number 2 heavyweight in the world. And then when Fabio Wardley beat him, so these three, and Caballel as well, to be fair, of kind of that 4 have kind of been bouncing between each other and going up and down the rankings and trying to earn that final shout at Usyk. I think I'd be more minded to want to see Caballel fight against Usyk, because I think he's probably earned it the most, and I think style-wise it'd be the most interesting fight. But I think if Fabio Wardley wins this fight, he has to be shouting down that door, saying, like, Usyk, you've dodged me once. Obviously, I'm not saying Usyk's dodged Fabio Wardley in that sense, but, you know, you didn't take the fight last time. You've gone and fought a kickboxer. Now's my time. Make it happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. If Wardley wins that, Usyk's definitely the next fight. Caballel's an interesting one. I think he's overdue too. I think we got a bit of a traffic jam here, and the whole going off fighting a kickboxer thing doesn't help that. So I don't know. And also, how long's Usyk sticking around for as well?
Yeah, I keep seeing TikToks and stuff, and it's like Usyk's like final fights, and it's like Rico Verhoeven, and then Wardley to go undisputed again, and then Ajit Caballel, and then David Benavidez. I'm like, he's not sticking around that long. You know, he's already got to a point now where he's touting AJ to be the next undisputed champion, kind of helping him out in training. That's not a fighter that's planning 3-4 years more in the sport. He's given us brilliant nights, brilliant fights. He's done so much for the sport and for, you know, the country of Ukraine as well. He deserves a rest. Give the man that rest.
You'd say it's 2 tops, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd love to see the Caballel fight. Maybe in Poland, I think. They did the Dubois fight, obviously, in Poland. I think that would be a really exciting fight with, you know, between German and Ukraine. It shares the borders. It's a nice meeting point. But then that does leave Fabio Wardley in an awkward situation where he's kind of beaten all the best. He can't fight Moses Itauma because they share a stable, and you kind of go, what next? I guess Murat Gassiev is the WBA regular, maybe, but I think Frank's probably going to be eyeing that one up for Itauma. So it's in an awkward, like you say, a bit of a logjam. I think Dubois Itauma, if Dubois won this fight, would be a really interesting matchup. I don't know if Frank does it, because it's two of his fighters, but he did two of his own fighters this time. I'm half-minded to think that's maybe what he would do.
That would be...
Just keep it as a British champion.
That would be interesting. I've got opinions on that one already, I think. Early thought opinions if that did ever happen. But I feel like we're looking too far into the future here.
Yeah, but I think that's the problem is because, and you know, I'm all for, I'm all against the kind of, oh, he didn't fight him, so let's just make him a world champion now. You know, interim titles and stuff are frustrating, but the fact that the WBC have kind of allowed Usyk to defend it against a world champion a kickboxing world champion, when you've got someone like Kabiel that's been waiting in the wings so long, it does create this situation we've got now where you're kind of going, well, we've got no fights. They've all kind of fought each other. They're all waiting for the same opportunity and none of them are getting it. So where does that leave us? So that's kind of why you end up spiraling and well, he could fight him and him and him, and the reality of the matter is it never happens that way. And you've still got AJ Fury.
I was just about to say, we didn't even mention AJ and Fury. If they fight towards the end of the year, where does that leave either of those gents?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to say when that fight happens, and I like to say when, because I do believe it is happening now. When that fight happens, both men hold their heads high and say, goodbye, we've had our time, this was our swan song, but I know how boxing works, and money talks, and AJ off the back of a win against Fury, Eddie Hearn would be screaming his name as the next undisputed champion, trying to negotiate X, Y, and Z fight. And the same with Fury. If he went and, you know, beat AJ comfortably, then people would be saying, oh, well, he's still got it. He wants the trilogy with Usyk. He wants this, that.
Yeah.
I still think a Kabiel fight for Fury would be great fun. Go back to Germany where obviously he beat Klitschko and do it like that. But yeah, that fight's kind of in its own ecosystem, the AJ Fury fight. It's kind of like they're kind of doing their thing.
Yeah.
I really hope they both retire off the back of it.
I would agree. I'm not really looking at title aspirations for either of them after that. Even though I'm sure that would come, it is more like you're saying. I mean, it's been the fight for years and years and years now. It is almost like their own division, their own lane. It's almost like an exhibition fight at this point for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like it does matter who wins because there's so much pride on the line, but it just matters that they're fighting. That's what matters, not the title, not the you know, wherever it is. You know, no, as Dua Lipa said, she's not performing. Is it all up in the air? No, it's obviously going to be happening. It's going to be happening in Wembley as well, which I think is brilliant. Like if it got announced to say it's happening Riyadh Arena, I'd be still excited, but there would be a little bit of me that's like, it deserves better, and it's getting it. So with all that being said, I mean, we've got you know, slightly distracted there from what else we've got on the card, like I mentioned, which is just domestic dust up after domestic dust up, and Jack Rafferty versus Ekow Essuman is right up there. A really intriguing fight. Rafferty now at welterweight, which will be interesting because he was a big super lightweight anyway, and Ekow Essuman obviously on the comeback from losing to Jack Catterall. So style wise, I just think it's a great fight. It gels nicely. I think they're going to be all action. I imagine they're both gonna want to get that stoppage, and if they don't, it will be a real attritional war. I can't wait for this one. This is the kind of co-main where you go, yeah, okay, I'll tune in a bit earlier.
You just know this is going to get the fans like up here, just ready for the main event, because I think the pace that they're going to push, both of them, is just going to be insane. Like, there might even be fan fatigue by the end of it.
It is a Queensbury card as well, so you know it'll go on late. But I know what you mean. In many ways, there is on maybe too many sort of 50-50s. But yeah, I'm really interested with Jack Rafferty because he, I suppose in many ways similar to Wardley, kind of, I think he had like a 2-3 fight run where everyone was like, oh, I don't know if he wins this, and he won it. And I don't know if he wins this, and he won it. And then the Mark Chamberlain draw kind of came in, and now he's moved up to welterweight. You'd imagine he's sort of feeling he was a little bit tighter that weight. There's nothing to suggest that he's going to lose. He's an unbeaten fighter, 27 fights. But then Ekow Essuman, I'll never write off, even at 37 years of age.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's tough when you're a fighter like Jack Rafferty, because his reputation would say he's a great fighter and he should be put favourite all the time. But when you're going in there with someone like a live wire, like Essuman, who could, he just has the stamina to just put it on you. You don't know how he's going to deal with that, do you?
Yeah, I'm still so shocked when Essuman lost to Cattrall, I couldn't believe it. I was not lost, but when he got stopped by Cattrall, I was like, hang on, what? Like there was many things I thought might happen in this fight, and that was pretty much the only one I hadn't banked for, was the fact that Cattrall might stop him. So, maybe, they always say, the one thing you can't avoid is time, and age will get to every fighter, but I get the sense he's still got more in him, and I think he will just back to square one, power through, engine, get faster and faster and faster through those rounds, and look to get Rafferty to unravel. But Jack Rafferty is not a fighter that's immune to fighting at a high pace, and he's beaten other fighters by fighting at a high pace. So it's that classic like bit of quality versus engine, and how those two match up.
Do you think Rafferty will be looking to put on like an emphatic performance? He might think Essuman's kind of going over the hill, new weight class.
Yeah, I don't know if you go up I was saying that Cattrall literally did exactly this, but I was going to say I don't know if you step up to welterweight and think, yeah, I'll knock out Ekow Essuman. I don't know if that's something you can necessarily think, but it's been done, like I said. So he'll definitely want to win this and get back into the running. Whereas Essuman, it kind of feels like this is the last chance saloon for him. He got so close to a world title opportunity and then lost it to Cattrall, but at 37, you ain't got time for another rebuild, really, which is why he's gone in for another great fight after it. So I think less so for Rafferty, but it has got a little bit of a must-win feel. I don't know who I'm edging on this one. I think maybe Essuman. I think Essuman will be too much for Rafferty, but I said that about Henry Turner a few fights ago, and Jack Rafferty beat him quite comfortably. So we'll have to wait and see.
In contrast, I'll back Rafferty then.
In back his?
Yeah, why not? New guard and all that.
I hear it. I wish I'd got Ben and Harry's predictions on the group chat, but I didn't think that far ahead. So never mind. You'll have to just guess what they think.
We've got a new host anyway. So.
Ooh, yeah. David Morrell versus Zach Chelli. Now, this one's I say it's a really interesting one. It's a bit of an interesting one because obviously Morrell was meant to fight Callum Smith. Callum Smith was injured and they've got him out on this card in the UK. Presumably the Callum Smith fight's still happening as far as I'm aware down the line. But Chelli's an interesting one because he kind of fell away a bit after that Callum Simpson loss. But I've heard a lot of stories that Chelli seriously hits. A lot of people say Chelli's the most powerful fighter they've ever been hit by. And he's stepped up he's up at light heavyweight against David Morrell. So you'd have to say Morrell's a favourite. I mean, he's a world level fighter. He lost unanimously to David Benavidez, but he picked up 2 or 3 rounds in that fight. And after that Zerdo win for David Benavidez, you have to kind of say that's aged like a fine wine, that result. To lose narrowly and particularly to go the distance against Benavidez, you kind of have to say, yeah, you're probably all right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what my thought process is, to be honest. Like you say, I think he's the large favourite. But equally, you look at Zach Chelli, what a fight to get.
Yeah.
Like, what an opportunity. I'm sure he is relishing in this. And especially after the Benavidez result last week, he probably thinks, I could go in there, you could get knocked out within 8 rounds. And as long as he puts up some of a fight, I doubt his PR is going to really take that much of a hit.
Oh, yeah, no one's going to be, he's lost a couple domestic fights to Jeffers and to Simpson. I was at the Simpson fight, and that was a brilliant fight. He made Simpson go all the way to the wire in Barnsley, and it very much was a night of, this is Callum Simpson's night, and Chelli did a real good job of trying to upset that. So he'll do the same here. He will come in here game, he'll come in here aggressive, and he'll try and upset the party for David Morrell, and then start saying, I want Callum Smith for the interim. I've earned this opportunity. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. But he falls into that like banana skin territory of like, he shouldn't win it, but he's got just about enough that it's boxing at the end of the day. So I think it's probably the most one-sided fight on the card. But that being said, on most cards, it wouldn't be considered that. I think this is just a really competitive card from top to bottom.
For Morrell's side, in your opinion, what do you think he needs to do?
I think he's got to win this emphatically, particularly if he's fighting Callum Smith, because Callum Smith is a really tidy operator, really, really tidy. We saw it against Buachi in Saudi Arabia. That was a fight, unbelievable fight of the year probably, and he came out on the better of it. So I think to head into that fight confident off the back of a really, really close fight against Kataev, you've got to be winning this comfortably. Zach Chelly's a domestic level fighter, and I mean that unlike I meant it when I was talking about Conor Benn earlier in the week. I mean that in no disrespect at all to Zach Chelly. Davin Morel sees himself better than British domestic level, so it's a fight he has to win pretty comfortably, and I probably see him doing so. But you never know. There's always room for an upset. And, staying in the light heavyweight division, Liam Cameron versus Brad Ray. Again, it was like, this is a fight that no one's asked for. No one is going on Twitter and going, I really want to see Liam Cameron versus Brad Ray. But then when it's announced, you go, yeah,
everyone's
that's exactly what I want to see. And again, both men are beatable. They've lost fights in their day, particularly both lost to Lyndon Arthur fairly narrowly. But Liam Cameron still does have quite a lot of kudos off the back of that, particularly that first fight against Ben Whittaker, where whatever you think about that situation, if they hadn't gone over the ropes, you'd say that he was winning that fight and probably unlucky to not win it. The fact that it was a 5-round fight and they gave it a draw, the maths ain't maths in there.
No.
They've clearly gone, well, this is a bit awkward. Let's give it a draw and do a rematch, and we'll just kind of paper over the cracks.
Protecting the prospect, aren't they?
Yeah, massively. Because that final round where they gave it as a 10-10 because they went over the ropes during the round and they didn't complete the round, Liam Cameron was all over him in that round. It was pressure. It was a one-sided round. I love Ben Whittaker, but he probably should have lost that fight. So Liam Cameron will be coming into this one off the back of winning against Troy Jones as well. Pretty confident. But Brad Ray's really good. I remember the fight against Shakan Pitters, and Shakan Pitters is awkward light heavyweight. He's so gangly. He's just, I'm not one to talk, but he is all limbs. And I think he's 6'4", 6'5" as a light heavyweight. And he did really well in that fight to beat Pitters. He lost to Lyndon Arthur, which I don't think I expected him to do so. I seem to remember I predicted him to win that one, but yeah, just again, it's really entertaining. I get the sense that whoever's matched this card, I think it's Lee Eaton's doing the matchmaking for Queensberry now, along with our mate Dan, they've just kind of gone, let's make entertaining fights. Let's just make fights for the fans. If they were going to charge pay-per-view for this card, let's make sure it's worth people's money. And I think it probably is.
That's exactly the way it should be as well. So, top job Queensberry.
Yeah, it's not matchmaking wise. That's not something we say all too often. They're the first. We are the first to wind up Queensberry for prospect versus journeyman and finishing at 2 a.m. sometimes, which is frustrating. But if you're charging pay-per-view, you need a card worth watching, not just a fight worth watching. And I think Fabio Wardley versus Daniel Dubois sells a few pay-per-views in its own right, but it's only right that you deliver that card to go with it. And for us here in Wales to have Gavin Gywnne back on the card, so I can't think of many people in boxing more deserving of that opportunity. He's come off the back of being Wales's most recent British champion. He's a European champion, Commonwealth champion. Lost to Mark Chamberlain in Saudi Arabia in pretty emphatic fashion, but it was by no means a sort of, career ender. And the opportunities just dried up from there. And to go in there with Cameron Vong on a Matchroom show, lose narrowly, but everyone thought you won the first fight. And then even then, Cameron Vong went, I need another fight before that.
Yeah.
And he fought in a small hall show in Neath. Like the fact that he was there is, it's testament to him and just, he was ready to fight. But you've got a former British Commonwealth champion fighting in a sports hall in Neath.
All sorts of wrong.
They're doing same day weigh-ins. I think, the same day weigh-in for a fight of his caliber, it's just not something they get used to anymore. They've gotten not used to that the day before weigh-ins. I think we were interviewing him afterwards and he threw up outside. It was not a pretty performance. And then he got back and got the draw against Wong. Again, probably narrowly deserved to win it in most people's minds.
I thought he won both fights.
And now he's finally found an opportunity. And it's an opportunity that I think he probably could or should win, that could just give him that one last roll of the dice that I think when you see fighters, you think, you're on that comeback trail. Just get one more roll of the dice. Get yourself in a good position. Get yourself a good payday. Now up at super lightweight. I'm really happy for Gav for this.
And you fancy him with this as well?
I do, yeah. I've watched a bit of Kelly Majid, and he's a Queensberry fighter, and he's fought. I think he's fought in the prelims and stuff of. I think he fought in the prelims of Brad Ray Lyndon Arthur card, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was, or the card that fight was on. And I remember watching him and being, and I don't mean this in disrespect to him, but I wasn't wowed. And I know that Gav's game, he'll turn up, again, similar to Essuman, he's just engine. Keep going. And if you're not someone that can
live with that,
dramatically outbox him or hurt him, then you're in for a really long night. We saw that. I mean, Cameron Vong's a really talented fighter, but based simply off the fact he couldn't hurt Gav was just able to keep coming. So
stars make fights at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So if Khalil can get in there early, press him, ideally hurt him, ring his bell early on, then we might be looking at a different fight. But going off what you're saying, you're expecting Gav to control the pace, control where it goes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and particularly now he's moved over to Gary Lockett's gym. He's slightly smarter about his business. I mean, when he was a lightweight, he was a 6 foot lightweight, and he was boxing on the inside, which is daft. You've got great long arms. You're a tall fighter at the weight. Box, and they've kind of been able to get him to do that, particularly in those Vong fights a bit more, but still use that engine. So yeah, I see him. You have to hurt him because he's the kind of fighter where his biggest strength is also probably his biggest downfall, and we saw that against Chamberlain. It's his bravery. Sometimes there is a time where maybe it's not most smart to just keep coming if you've got a fractured orbital bone and you're getting your head boxed off. But he kept coming. But it's also the same trait that if you're not getting your head boxed off and you haven't got a fractured orbital bone, that it's a long night for the other person. So yeah, in that fight, his bravery let him down. But generally speaking, his bravery is what makes him a problem for anyone.
And we'd have to say in this case that certainly Khalil Majid hasn't really shown the levels that Mark Chamberlain has shown. So you've got to think of that, and the threat coming the other way puts Gav in pretty good stead.
It does, yeah. I mean, the Mark Chamberlain win from Oslo, the win that Mark Chamberlain picked up, obviously, he's struggled since that fight, really. I think confidence-wise, losing to Padley has shaken him up a little bit. He's just not quite got that confidence to let his hands go in the same way. But then Padley's gone on to do some great stuff. So you'd say that kind of balance is in a similar way that maybe that loss is aged really well as well. So yeah, I'd hope that Gab can come back and put himself in a good position domestically at super lightweight to get another opportunity at a British title, at a Commonwealth title or something. Because I think he's earned it. He's gone away and done the hard graft. He came up the hard way. He got to the top and then slipped away. And most fighters don't ever drop back down. But he went, yeah, I want to fight. I'll drop back down to the small hall, get that fight, keep busy, and then come back. And yeah, I hope good stuff. But I'm really looking forward to this card, top to bottom. I've got DAZN Ultimate, so I don't have to pay the pay-per-view, fortunately. I wouldn't pay it if I didn't. But I'm really looking forward to sitting down and watching like a proper evening of boxing, a proper full night of boxing with, yeah, entertaining top to bottom. I'm looking forward to it.
Likewise.
I think I forgot as well, they've got Jalilov, former, I think he's two-time Olympic gold medalist, now turn over. It's a rubbish fight. He needs to start progressing him a little bit. But, to the fact that you've got an Olympic gold medalist on an undercard is not something that many promoters can say. So yeah, lots of good stuff. I'm looking forward to all of that. Obviously, like I said, anyone who's watching, listening, let us know Fabio Wardley, Daniel Dubois, who's you're predicting to win that fight, because I think it's going to be, lots of mixed opinions on that one. But otherwise, we will be back next week to obviously redo this one and preview what is a really busy May of boxing. So thank you always for tuning in, and we'll catch you all next week.
Punches chance. Punches Chance Podcast.